to the Stickers and Scuffs podcast with Cam, and Graydon Bunn. True Canadian race fans. This show is presented by Remax Jack. Call Remax Jack and start to pack. Green flag is out. Let's get this podcast underway.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Stickers and Scuffs podcast with Cam and Graydon Bunn. Today, a very, very exciting guest with us, Matt Weaver of Autoweek and the short track scene, which is actually how I found out about Matt. Matt, you've joined us on a very busy week for racing news, a very exciting week for racing news, a very exciting week in general because we're going to COTA for the first time. But I have to ask first, our buddy Mark Hall from Herniac Hall Motorsports had the question if you've been able to find your cinnamon Coke yet.
No. So listen, I've had a stash. This thing is only sold here in the States from like October to December. It's a holiday drink. And so last year they did the cans and the bottles, and I was able to keep finding the cans for a while, but because of the pandemic, they limited production and it was only bottles this year. And so when I finally found some in Nashville, when I went down to the All-American 400 at Fairgrounds Speedway, Nashville, I found a Kroger grocery store that had like a big box full. And I bought I grabbed a cart and I loaded this thing full of a cart, and I took it to the self-checkout, and no one said anything, but I can only imagine this picture. You see this guy with an entire buggy full of cinnamon Coke, and it turned out being like 70 bottles. And it was one at a time. Swipe, beep, 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 beep. And I went through most of those pretty quick during the winter, but I hid some away from myself. So we live in Birmingham. Mm-hmm. We have like a fishing camp, kind of a lake house thing, about 3 hours south, right off the Gulf in North Mobile County. And so I hid a stash, what I'm going to call it, away from myself. And I'm now down to my last, I think I got 5 or 6 bottles left. But the problem is it's May 18th when we're recording this, and they expired in March. And I'm drinking like 2 months past next buy date. And they're still good. Like, I'll tell you what, 2 months expired cinnamon Coke is way better than like perfectly fresh regular Coke. It is so good. I'm an addict. I need an intervention. I need help. And last winter, summer, I was able to keep my cans going because the cans stay fresher too. So the bottles aren't as good anymore. So I could keep the cans going to like July or August. And then finally October rolled around and here came the bottles. But now it's like I'm down to my final 5 or 6 20 ounces, and I'm almost out. And I'm so sad and depressed thinking about it.
Sweating it a little.
I need help. So good.
Well, of all the companies, though, we support Coke for their sponsorship in racing, so at least it's good on that aspect. But
you guys have, and I haven't tried it yet, but a friend of mine in Ontario sent me a picture. You guys have like I think they call it the Quebec Maple Coke. And that sounds good to me too. Yeah, like I got a picture of it. It's real.
I don't doubt it.
Yeah. So I haven't tried that one yet. And maybe it's only in Quebec. I don't know.
Could be.
But that sounds intriguing to me too, because like my breakfast every morning, I've got cinnamon everything. I'm a cinnamon, I don't know what to call it. I've got problems. I love cinnamon. But I have cinnamon coffee in the morning with like maple oatmeal. And so they kind of like strike the same chord for me, the cinnamon and maple. So I want to try the maple Coke. That might be my new obsession once the borders open and I can cross over.
Well, maybe if you're over here, sorry, Cam, you could check out some racing too.
Well, right. It sounds so secondary at this point. It's like, I would love to cross the border. It's like, there's the Maple Coke, and I want to go to Banff, and I want to go to Quebec, and I want to go to Trois-Rivières for the first time. Oh, by the way, racing too. Yeah. That little thing that I do on occasion.
Yeah. Talking about being an addict, we're addicts to racing up in Canada, and unfortunately, we're still kind of in a holding pattern. We don't really know. It was supposed to start next week, and we don't really know what's going on. Likely it's we're going to be waiting for a bit longer, but things are turning the corner here. You've obviously been able to catch a ton of racing this year, albeit under different circumstances. It's still not everything back to normal, but what would you say are your highlights so far for 2021, Matt?
So, funny story. I caught the tail end of that entire spiel because where I'm recording this right now is at a park near my hometown, and there is a train track right there. And I don't know how much your mics picked it up because I muted myself. It's like, oh, there's a train. And I grew up next to this train track. And so people ask me all the time, how annoying is it to have a train about a football field away from your house? I don't hear them anymore. Like, I don't even acknowledge in my head that a train's going by. But halfway through, I heard this train starting to go by, and it's like, oh, I can't hear it, but they sure as hell can. One, I should mute myself. Two, I missed all of that. But I think the entire bit of that is this has been a challenging year or so, and the highlights from the past year is that kind of the gist of it?
Your highlights so far this year.
Yeah, so the highlights for me, and I'm being hesitant to answer it this way because I want to be so respectful to you guys because I know it's been a struggle north of the border to get things reopened, and so I don't want to dismiss that. But we're starting to get things pointed in the right direction here. I feel like there's still struggles. Like me, I've chosen to get the vaccine. I've got both of my shots, so I can pretty much exist totally normal. And to me, that's the highlight, right? Like being able to go to. I went to my local grocery store about a week ago. It was the first time I've had the mask off in a grocery store in a year, and I'd forgotten what that doesn't smell like, what the grocery store smells like. And so just that, things feeling normal. Going to a racetrack, I've been going to races this whole time, and it's such a tricky subject because it's required for NASCAR and IndyCar. So you have to, so it's not even debatable. But then you go to a short track event, and I'm not like a super stickler for it. I try to be super respectful. I try to keep in mind, could this make someone sick, all that stuff. But you go to certain, the short track community is super, super conservative, and generally they don't like the mask. And so sometimes I have to go without the mask because I don't want them to be pissed off at me because they'll say something. And so it's just such a tricky thing. And so for me, 2021 has been about how can I, the fact that I can now move forward and it feels normal and, it's no longer a topic. And that's just the best part. I'm about to go to Indianapolis for the month of May. So because I've had both of my shots, I'm good. The mask is not an issue. I can talk to people without it being in the back of my mind. Going to World of Outlaws or short track races and no longer having to think about, well, if I take the mask off, what if I'm responsible for making someone sick, or being able to do interviews. Gosh, it's so hard when you're talking to people, even if someone else doesn't mind the mask and I don't mind the mask, when you're trying to have a conversation with them, it's really hard to hear what someone's saying. It's tough. And so not having to worry about that, just the sense of normalcy that's come with, turning the page from 2020 to 2021, that's been the best part. But again, I'm totally cognizant that you guys have had a hard time kind of turning that page too, and the rollout's been a little slower, so I don't want to dismiss that. That sucks. Hopefully you guys can follow suit here in the next couple of months.
It's looking that way. I mean, we're getting there. I mean, the one thing that I think is good is that we're turning the page in terms of vaccinations now, which leaves a lot of window for a season to be done, which is very, very hopeful. Maybe the borders aren't, that might not be happening, but we don't need that. We need the racing to happen.
I need that.
Yeah, exactly. If we have to ship some poutine down to you, we might have to. I know there's a couple great poutine places that you haven't tried yet. So, we would have to definitely get you down into Ontario, and we'll do what we can that way. But
I'm going to swim across the lake and just hope no one notices.
No, don't swim across that lake. No, don't do that. It's come sprouting a third ear or something. But One thing that we happen to be talking about is, the amount of news that's breaking kind of, and we have the new car. We'll definitely talk about that. But I think the biggest and the hottest debate has got to be the one that's all over social media. People are crying a river. People are angry. People are I don't even know what else to say.
You can go two directions here. We're either talking numbers or we're talking packages. So which one is it?
We're going to talk numbers because Graydon and I, and you've seen it in the Pinty series, they do the numbers on the quarter panels. And we don't think that the car looks awful. I think it looks fine. At the end of the day, Matt, is this a decision that NASCAR should be forcing on teams? Or is this something that they should have them as they can elect to choose where the number goes?
So the first thing I would say is that as someone who has hills that I am more than willing to die on, I can respect someone choosing this hill to die on. It's not my hill to die on. I don't care. I've seen good-looking cars that have numbers on the doors, numbers on the rear panel, the front rear panel, on the contingency space. I cover late model stock racing in the Carolinas, and they put those numbers all over the place. I've seen races in the NASCAR Peak Mexico series where the number is like all over the door. I'm just like, I don't know what that's really doing. I don't know if your sponsors are cool with that, but the number's like blown up all over its stretch. And so I don't care. I think that if you come up with a rule, whether it's like a standardized uniform position, NASCAR, the Cup Series has some really good graphic designers. I mean, we have some good looking paint schemes this year. I thought we had some great looking paint schemes for the All-Star race when it was mandatory last year too. They'll figure it out and they'll make them look good. Maybe we could make it, you can elect to do it, kind of like in the Pinty series where it's all over the place. But one thing I don't like about the Pinty series, and I'm so OCD, I hate seeing a car that has the number on the panel and then one that has the number on the door, because my OCD goes nuts. It's like pick one or the other. I need the uniformity. But again, I recognize this is a me problem because I'm also a guy that's always appreciated that Penske, their numbers were 2 and 12 and 22. That's sort of like uniformity using the 2. I need that sort of uniformity. RCR with a 3 and then the 8, or the 3 and the 31. Hendrick with the 24, 48, 24, 25. I'm crazy like that. I need help. So I personally need uniformity. But if NASCAR chose a lack of uniformity, I'd get over it. Like, whatever. I think that no matter what the rules are, put the numbers wherever, the best graphic designers will make good-looking cars. My only problem is, or my only concern, rather, and I've tweeted this a couple of times, the number just has to stay prominent. The next-gen car borrows a lot of elements from supercars. So now people are sharing supercars that have the numbers, just a little sans serif decal on the window and saying, you could just do that. But you can't do that because unlike supercars, where it's the same sponsor for all 16 races, you've got 20 primaries for 36. And plus, the number is so important to identity and NASCAR fandom. I'm looking behind you, and I see the 3, I see the 24, I see the 8. No one's really thinking Wrangler, Goodwrench, DuPont, Budweiser, whatever.
Not anymore.
Right. People, wave the flags and it's the number. The sponsor's there too, but the number is so intertwined in the identity of a driver and a team that I don't think you can minimize it. So wherever you put the number, whatever they decide, whether it's a fixed position, an elected position, the number should be prominent and large because that's the identifier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I think Graydon, we've kind of had this conversation before with DJ, and DJ made a point. We throw it all the way back to actually our very first podcast episode with DJ. I don't know if Graydon, if you remember exactly what he said, but he said he doesn't care if he has to stick it on the front hood of the, or in the front windshield of the car. If the sponsor wants it and is going to pay for it, then put it where the sponsor wants it. And I think for the teams that maybe their sponsors If they're going to invest more money to do it this way, that's great. If a sponsor is perfectly fine leaving it the way it is, that's fine too. So I think we would definitely, if there's compromise in some face, we know that NASCAR fans, racing fans as a whole, we know that it's not an issue of right now really where the number is. It's, are we going to be able to get sponsors that actually need, like, they require that extra space? I think here in Canada, the reason why we went that way is we really needed sponsors. We really needed to help them out. I don't really know if that's going to help bring sponsorship to NASCAR right now.
I was on a radio show yesterday,
mm-hmm.
and I kind of brought myself to this conclusion, but I'd never thought about it until real time. Unlike the Pinty series, so the Pinty series is different. So is short track racing in general,
Mm-hmm.
where the car is the primary driver. People go to the track and they see the sponsor. There's hero cards. People drop the car off at a business's front doors and they do meet and greets. That's all part of the activation experience. But in the Cup Series and national touring in general, I think we sometimes overstate the importance of a paint scheme, because sometimes, and I know you guys don't think this way, but a lot of fans and people who follow the industry think that it's all about the paint scheme and seeing the car on TV or seeing it at the track, and that's not what these businesses are built upon. Sponsorships are about business to business, activation, hospitality,
Right.
doing, especially during the pandemic, doing the Zoom calls, having conversations, getting you, like a good one I think of right now is like, this is a sprint car version, but I think you can apply it to other forms too. I think of the fact that on Rico Abreu's World of Outlaws sprint car, he's got the Rowdy Energy on his car. And the reason they put that deal together is that through the World of Outlaws and the fact that that car travels all over the country, he's able to take that brand and create brand awareness at Casey's General Stores, which is a big partner and sponsor of the World of Outlaws. So now you can tie those two businesses together. It's like the Casey's General Knoxville Nationals, here's Rowdy Energy, which you can now find at Casey's stores. And so if you can tie businesses together, that's how you have a successful brand. On the Cup Series, JTG to Hurdy Racing, you have all these brands that are all over these cars. And the value there isn't the fact that they've got 17 small decals on a car. I mean, you look at that 47 car, you've got every single brand under the sun on the car. That's not what's creating the money, the return on investment. It's the fact that if you go to Kroger, another sponsor of JTG, all of those brands, Scott's, Reese's,
Bush's Baked Beans.
Yeah, Bush's Baked Beans. You can find them all at Kroger. So now you've tied all these sponsors together, and that's the key. And then you go to the store and you've got the 47 car, the 37 car in front of a Kroger, a meet and greet. All this stuff is tied together. This is a long-winded way of saying it doesn't really freaking matter where you put the numbers. Like, does it create more, space? Does it make the hero cards look cooler when you're doing show cars and all that stuff? Yeah, but you can't convince me, and maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we need like a Marcus Lemonis or a Jonathan Marshall from the Race Team Alliance to convince me otherwise. But I do not believe, sitting here right here today talking to y'all, that a sponsorship agreement for a Cup team is going to live and die based on moving the number just a little bit further. That's not going to be the deciding factor. There's so much more that goes into it.
Matt, I mean, we've followed each other for a while on Twitter, and I'm a big fan of your work, and I tend to think the same in terms of your opinions when you talk about hills to live and die on. In your profile, even, it says you're a race fan with a platform. I'd like to back it up a little bit if we could. Can you, you touched on it, I'm sure, a little bit with the boys. I don't hear it because they're all headsetted up too, so I have to watch it like everyone else. So could you tell us about you got to your platform, motorsports editor and writer and whatnot.
Yeah, I told the boys about my history growing up in a racing family, so I'm not going to double up there. But I grew up in a racing family.
Yeah.
I'm a third generation racer, and it got to the point where I had to stop racing because it got very expensive, and that's just the truth of the matter. And
For sure.
basically, the question was posed to me. It's like, well, we can keep racing, and it'll be fun, and we can make time to do it. But you need to start thinking about college and going to school and what you want to do. And I was able to go to college, and funny thing is, I actually never finished college. I finished college one class short, and it was a math class, and that's why I'm a journalist. I can't math. I could go back to college right now and take just the entry level math class, and I would graduate. That's all I'm missing. But I'm a journalist for a reason, because I don't math. I just do not math. That's all you can
I
say.
hear you.
So because I stopped racing, and this is so weird to think about now, I went like 2 or 3 years where I didn't watch racing. My dad stopped racing after I stopped racing, and he picked up racing 15 years later. 2 years ago, he just started racing again. So racing was a part of my family, and I really got into. I've always been a baseball guy, and you guys love baseball.
Yeah.
And so I actually went to school thinking that I was going to be a stick and ball journalist, and I covered the launching of our Division I NCAA football program at South Alabama. I covered our basketball program, our soccer programs. I went to where I live now, Birmingham, Alabama, to cover the NCAA tournament. The Senior Bowl is in Mobile, where I'm from. So all the top college football players come to Mobile before draft day to get one last, look in front of the scouts. Covered that for a little bit, and there was a blog. God, I haven't thought about this till now. It was a Canadian blog. It is a Canadian NASCAR blog called NASCAR Ranting and Raving, and editor found out that I was a journalist, and I commented on his stuff all the time, and found out that I was a student editor, and he's like, "You want to contribute to our blog?" Bob Ellis is his name. I don't know if you guys know Bob Ellis, but Bob Ellis's NASCAR Ranting and Raving, and Bob had asked me, it's the Forever 3 blog is what he called it. He was a big Dale Earnhardt guy.
This is familiar now.
Yeah.
So
I think Forever 3.
Yeah, that rang a bell.
Yeah, I contributed to NASCAR Ranting and Raving, and NASCAR, as the economy got bad in like 2007, 2008, actual outlets stopped sending reporters to races. So NASCAR opened up the media center to blogs, and the NASCAR Ranting and Raving blog, which I'm now so embarrassed by because it sounds so unprofessional. But it was a great start. So no disrespect to Bob. I wouldn't be doing this if not for Bob. So hopefully Bob sees this. I'll give him a shout out on Twitter. I would have not been brought back into racing if not for, the NASCAR Ranting and Raving blog. And it just took off from there. I started to pick up more freelance assignments and started working for other outlets, and it just kind of kept building and progressing and led me here.
Passionate fan makes for passionate writer if you got the skills to put it to paper, man, and you've done great for yourself. It looks
I want to address that real quick. I hate to cut you off, but a lot is made of this, and a lot is made of this in NASCAR circles too. Sometimes when I piss off NASCAR, it's like, well, you say it yourself. You're self-described a fan with a platform, and you need to figure out what you want to be. Do you want to be a real journalist, or do you want to be a fan? And I'm just like, sit down, take all the seats. I recognize that I am a unique voice in motorsports media, and that's why I don't even really call myself a pure Walter Cronkite style journalist.
Yeah.
I'm not. And there are some times that I wish I could be, or wish I would choose to be. I can be. I do. I do journalism well, and I'll pat myself on the shoulder here a little bit. I do journalism well, but I also think it is so important, especially from a NASCAR standpoint, to where we're wrestling with sports versus entertainment. Do we want to be a motorsport, or do we want to be a variety show? I think it's important to have a voice from someone who is from a third generation racer who lives racing, not just NASCAR, whose entire life is not dependent on just NASCAR, World of Outlaws, late model racing, dirt, midgets, sprints, tour type modifieds. I'm a racing guy. And yeah, I am a racing fan, first and foremost. And I have decided, whether right, wrong, or indifferent, that my path is going to be reflective of the racing fan, not the NASCAR fan, not the NASCAR fan who doesn't care if we turn it into, pull the lever, spin the wheel, wherever you land, the all-star race. That's the all-star race this year, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
those NASCAR only fans will eat up whatever you throw at them. And I don't mean to be disparaging to them, but NASCAR is wrestling, and this is just the fact of the matter. Do we want to cater to sport, or do we want to cater to chaos? And I choose to represent and reflect that audience who likes the sport, not just the chaos, the show, but the sport.
Yes.
And sometimes that brings me into conflict with the sanctioning body. I will wear it because I represent racing fans, and I will represent them till the day I die.
And we thank you for that, man.
For sure.
It's like from a Canadian standpoint, as big Pinty series fan, having you being given your testimonials when you're able to take in our races, even when you cover them from far away. I mean, it's still great to have that voice, that you do stand out among the others with your opinions, and whether people choose to agree or not, I mean, that sets you apart from others.
So if you've seen the COVID protocols being taken from the beginning, when NASCAR was still running, we don't have tracks of that size. Like, that's just not the reality. Do you find, or do you think that what was implemented in, say, those bigger facilities could be implemented at a much smaller facility, safely enough that maybe it would allow governments to feel comfortable in allowing fans at a track? Because obviously you've seen it in different stages at different levels, as you mentioned earlier. So is it something possible that you think for a small, short track, maybe our festivals, they're probably not going to happen just because the amount of people that would be there. But on the short track side, do you see that being an option?
So this whole topic to me is tough, and it's tough for multiple reasons, because obvious disclaimer, not a doctor, not a physician, right? So like anything I say would be based on the fact that I'm educated, right? I mean, I'm well read. I read every report. I watch the reports, but I'm not a doctor. So it's been interesting to go to NASCAR races where everything is given the most due diligence. Masks on at all times. Last year, the mask mandate's off here in the States now, as long as you're outside for NASCAR. And same thing for IndyCar and the Indy 500 and physical distancing. But then I would go to a short track race, like the Snowball Derby in December. So even though it's the Gulf Coast and it's still warm, it's still pretty cold. And we know now through 2 winters of COVID that it is worse in the winter than in the summer.
Right.
And you had 20,000 fans in Pensacola with no one caring whatsoever about the pandemic. And I even wrote in advance that I am just afraid that it's going to be, it ticked off the track, but I called it a potential super spreader derby, and it ticked them off. But you know what? There was one competitor. The only case of COVID that came from the derby that I'm aware of is that there was a crew member who was in Florence, South Carolina for a late model stock race, South Carolina 400, the Ty Majeski one, who then traveled to Pensacola for the Snowball. And at some point in between, he had contracted COVID-19 and had fallen into a coma. But that was the only reported case that I was aware of.
Oh, okay.
I feel pretty confident in saying that what we've learned is that outdoor transmission is minimal, especially during the summer. And on the contrary, there was also the World of Outlaws. They had that one big outbreak, but I think I know what happened there. And again, not a doctor. I'm speaking totally out of my ass. When you go to Knoxville Raceway, there is a bar across the street that all the teams and all the drivers go to. And I think outdoors in the pit area, they were fine. They all went to the bar and they mingled. That's where that COVID outbreak came from. So I'm so cognizant of anything that I say can be politicized, and I hate it because I think, to me, I'm a follow the science, the
Yep.
fact kind of guy.
Yep.
And I think what
We're
we've
the same.
learned, yeah, and I think what we've learned is that outdoors, the data says you're probably pretty safe. And there weren't a lot of outbreaks from having big outdoor short track races, even the snowball derby. I don't think there was a big spike in cases in Escambia County, Florida, where that was, because it was an outdoor event.
Mhm.
And people are doing a good job washing their hands and trying not to be, don't be a jerk. Don't go cough on someone. And so I think as long as people are just not coughing and licking each other, hard ass, right? Don't
Yeah.
cough on someone and don't lick someone's face. I
Yeah.
know, hard in some circles. I've never had that problem. But
How well you know us.
so where I'm getting at is that I think and it's tough because I think that Canada's been, there's two things that are interesting about Canada, is that they have been more diligent, way more diligent than the US, for better and for worse.
Mhm.
They've also tried to space out the vaccine shots more than we have here, just because of a lack of production or availability, stuff like that. But I think where I'm getting at, I think we can have these outdoor races. I think we can have 8,000 fans show up to Jukasa. I think we can have 10,000 plus people show up to Mosport. It's outdoors. I think we can have the season as we've known it outdoors, as long as people are just don't cough on you and don't lick someone's face. And so I am genuinely, not an expert, surprised that Canadian sporting events are still adhering to way more diligence than we've had here in the States. But I don't know if there's a reason for that too. So I don't want someone to turn that around and say, oh, well, Weaver said this. All I know is that here in the States, where it's a lot warmer too, our summers are a lot hotter. And I know what y'all call summer, I call spring. And I say that from being I go to Canada and I'm like, man, this is so nice. It's so cool. And it's like, man, this is hot. So there's a lot of factors. That's where I'm getting. There's so many variables. But I am genuinely surprised, given the number of short track style events that only have 5,000 to 8,000 people, 20,000 at most for the snowball derby, that we haven't seen more of those in Canada, because the data shows people really aren't getting sick en masse when you're outdoors just doing the bare minimum. We can have a Pinty series schedule. I believe that, but I don't know why we don't.
Yeah, no, it's more of a government issue right now. But the reason I ask is we obviously need, and there is a lot more. It's not just racing, it's all sports. All outdoor activities essentially have been, quote, kind of banned, like organized.
We lost the Canadian Football League, right? Aren't they potentially shutting down?
Well, there's a great talk of a possible merger with the XFL, which was a little surprising to hear, with potentially, I think, The Rock buying it because he started in the CFL. His football career started there. But, for right now, obviously, the reason why I asked, because we don't have anything to go to the government. We have great people that are fighting for us, and they're fighting for racetracks. They're fighting for the series. They're fighting. But I don't think that there's a lot of care from the government when it comes to racing, because in Canada, hockey comes first. It's always been that way. It always will be that way. But I wanted to see, whether or not the government would look at and listen and say, oh, well, you know what? The U.S. hasn't had super spreader events at racetracks, and it's true. I mean, Graydon and I have had a lot of angry nights since it started. And the one thing was that it's outdoors. There's plenty of space. Maybe driver autographs might not be a thing to happen, and maybe you can't let people into the pits, but you can definitely spread out and watch a race. I mean, there's tons of, you've been to Jukasa, there's tons of seating to spread out there. I've been there for when it was good weather, and there's plenty of space still. So I think everybody's we're just itching to go. Graydon and I, we both went and make sure we got our vaccination, and, if they can open it up, that's all, I think we really are hoping for. Matt, when it comes to the rest of the season here, NASCAR as a whole is something that it questions us, it angers us at times, it makes us happy. I think at first, Graydon and I, we went off when we're going to COTA because of all the road courses we're going to COTA. But what I found is, and I think Graydon's the same way, is instead of that anger still being there, it's excitement because it's new.
It's a lure.
It's something that we haven't seen, and all of a sudden that gets people fired up. It gets people excited. We've got Boris Said coming back for this weekend. I mean, and he's in the Whataburger car. Like that
Paul
is
Menard
Paul Menard is coming back. We've got people from sports. Spencer Pumpelly. I went crazy when I heard. I mean, I was bummed for Ryan Vargas, but I was going crazy to see this. That we're getting the guys. We had Preston Pardis on our show last week. He's going to be at the track for a road course.
The Ringers.
So, yeah, so the Ringers are back, and people are loving that. So they went the road course way. We've talked at length, and I think you're probably in agreement that street circuits, they would work. Pinty series, I mean, we don't have to talk about Toronto or Trois Rivières any more than we already do. They're amazing, and the racing is fantastic. Where I question is, they talked about going back to their roots and talking about going to do short tracks, and nothing was added this year in terms of a short track. Do you see, other than Nashville, a plan, or is there any rumblings of more short tracks coming down the line, and not just Cup, but with Xfinity and trucks as well?
So the thing that always gets lost in this conversation, and I'm surprised people forget it because I think that it's kind of an under the radar kind of thing. No one brings up Fontana.
Yeah.
Right.
And so, listen, if they find a way to bring Fontana, which Fontana's happening, but Nashville Fairgrounds and Fontana, and say they do 2 races at Fontana, I don't see them spending all the money that it's going to take to make Fontana this immaculate short track and not have 2 races again. Maybe not. I mean, maybe they've already concluded that the LA market's not going to support them, whether it's, half mile, 2 miles, 4 miles, whatever, I don't know. But I think that at a minimum, that's 2 more short track races. The challenge is that when you're talking about a true short track too, not a short track, but not a short track like Iowa Speedway.
Yeah, by definition.
My eyes are rolling in the back of my head. Don't even get me started on Iowa. Iowa's a great racetrack. I would love for Iowa to be on the Cup Series. Let's not call it a short track.
Agreed.
By the way, that's not happening either. I mean, Iowa's left for dead right now. Like, it's for sale. Roger Penske isn't going to buy it at its current price. It's going to sit there. It's going to sit there until someone wants to pay NASCAR what it's worth, or NASCAR lowers the price.
Yeah.
But Fairground Speedway Nashville, I feel good about it. And I know a lot of people saw the public comment hearing last week, or my story on it was like, oh, well, that's bad news. Right now, my gut says 70% I think this is happening because the mayor wants it, and Scott Borchetta, who owns Big Machine Records, he wants it. Marcus Smith, he wants it. And when you have that many prominent or rich people who want something, they tend to happen. So you've got Fairgrounds Nashville. That could be added to the schedule. I would love for a summer race at Nashville Super Speedway and a playoff race at the Fairgrounds. That would be just epic.
Oh, man.
And so you've got Fontana, but it's so tough because to go to a short track, you need several factors. One, a market, a NASCAR market, a track that has all the amenities, or someone who wants to spend money to make it have all the amenities. I would be content. I did a story or a column or a feature, whatever you want to call it, my ideal but realistic 2026 schedule. And it had Fontana on it. It had Nashville. It had a street course. I called it Chicago, but wherever. I would love to go back to Montreal. That's kind of a street course. I mean, it's a road course, but it runs like a street course. Long straight, hard corners.
Yep.
I don't think you're going to see another short track.
By the way, Matt, just to interrupt, because you said Montreal, that has been, I think, the last 8 people we've asked. all have said Montreal. So, we'll
but I'm going to give you a wild card. I don't think this will be a cup race because the market is not a cup venue, but you never know. And this track will not die, North Wilkesboro. And listen, if you would have asked me about North Wilkesboro 6 months ago, I would have said it's not going to happen. I wrote a feature on Wilkesboro a couple of years ago, 2016, and North Wilkesboro Speedway has one employee, and it's Paul Call.
Yeah.
An old man that lives
Cuts the grass.
There's a trailer, and he cuts the grass. And I wrote that North Wilkesboro Speedway is probably going to die with Paul Call, because Paul Call, when the track was sold to SMI, it required Paul Call have a job. Like it's written in the contract.
Wow.
And so I always concluded that Paul Call dies, and now you no longer have to have a North Wilkesboro Speedway for him to cut the grass.
Yeah.
And now here we are, and we're talking about Marcus Lemonis wanting to get in. Marcus Smith brought it up to Dale Jr. on the Dale Jr. download. Dale Jr. didn't ask. Marcus says, I'm surprised you didn't ask me about North Wilkesboro. We're thinking about it. We're planning something. We're trying to figure it out. Maybe it'll be turned into a dirt track. I don't think anyone wants Wilkesboro to be a dirt track, but instead of covering up Bristol with dirt, maybe that's SMI's dirt track. And then you preserve the legacy of that historic facility. But I think it would be really cool. Listen, I don't think a cup race can be in Wilkes County, North Carolina. You've got Charlotte Motor Speedway, and you've got all these other tracks, Bristol, Martinsville, in the region. But the Xfinity Series, the Truck Series, needs some more standalone
Yes.
tracks. I remember growing up a kid of the 90s, and you saw Fairgrounds Nashville, and you saw Saga Speedway for the Truck Series, and you saw Memphis, and you saw IRP.
East Marine.
Yeah, you saw Pikes Peak and
I-70 Nazareth.
yeah. So I just think it's hard with TV because TV wants the uniformity because they don't want to have a TV crew in Michigan and then a TV crew in South Boston. It's hard and it's expensive. But we need some standalone. And people will say, well, Gateway. And I'm like, Gateway should be a cup race. The Gateway's great. So I just think we need some more of that old late 1990s Hickory. I'm not saying Hickory, but the South Boston, which by the way is owned by Pocono. Do we really need two events?
God, let's
Pocono? I don't think Pocono could be a cup race either. So don't quote me all. Weaver said South Boston is a cup race. But Pocono
said this.
Pocono owns it. So Pocono wouldn't be giving up any TV money. Make it an Xfinity Truck Series doubleheader. Pocono could take their cup. If you're going to have two races at Pocono and they're going to get that guaranteed $30 million a year for having the two cup races, invest in the South Boston. Make it a standalone. Yes. They can eat the cost a little bit. So we're spitballing here, right? I'm not predicting. Yeah. I'm not reporting. I don't want to see it like on some website. Oh, Matt Weaver says they're going back to Sobo. I ain't saying that.
No.
We've got flexibility. Pocono owns it. Let's start to think outside of the box because they are starting to invest in it a little bit.
Well, the Xfinity Series, Graydon and I talk about this all the time. It is the series. Like it is, I mean, last year was phenomenal. This year was phenomenal. What about an Xfinity race at Jacasa?
So before I answer that, I actually want to turn this show completely upside down. Hold on. This will be good. It'll be worth it.
Oh gosh.
We ratings are going to go through the roof. Arrival that has just appeared here at this park I'm working out of. So if you guys want hot takes, if you guys want
I'm vague tweeting Jeff Gluck right now because this is 750 truther.
I've been texting Gluck today, so
I said this man doesn't realize we're all 900 horsepower truthers. So
I'm actually just a motor sport, not a motor show truther. But that's neither here nor there. Anyway, if you guys want the hot takes and something that will appear on websites, someone said this.
Okay, let me tell you the real truth right now is that there are like probably 1 out of every 10 tweets he has to call me and be like, maybe delete that one.
Yeah. If people think people are mad at me over my tweets, I'm constantly telling Cass, I'm like, might want to delete that one.
He thinks that people assume that we have the same opinions a lot of times, and sometimes we don't.
No, I'm worried about that. I have to hear it. I have to hear it.
Not from me, from other people. Other people will talk to him about me and not talk to me about me.
It's like I didn't say it. It's not me.
He's my secretary.
Right. But no. So the question was Jukasa, right? So
yes, Jukasa.
Big
Jukasa. Oh my God, the food trucks out there.
We didn't talk about that.
Poutine at the racetrack.
In a food truck.
There you go.
Remember those, the chicken
on a stick.
Okay, they also had what's the chain though? The chicken chain.
Oh, do you want smokes?
No. That have the truck that was out there, and they were only giving away sauce.
Are you talking about
the sponsor?
Pinty's truck?
So they had a Pinty's truck, and they didn't have any chicken. They only had sauce. I was so confused. So I have yet to still try Pinty's chicken.
Well, but they gave us extra sauce.
Yeah, we had like a whole bag of sauce.
And I brought
the little packet. Yeah.
This thing's going off the rails, but I'm sorry. This is ratings. I know this is ratings.
No, we said Cassie was perfectly welcome to jump in, and we thank you for doing that, Cassie.
I make the ratings go down. She makes them go up. So listen, Jukasa, I would love it. And when you drive, past the farms, I love that drive to Jukasa because I love Hamilton, and I always stay in Hamilton. Lots of great like waterfalls near Hamilton. I love hanging out in Hamilton. Love Hamilton, Ontario. But I love driving away from Hamilton, Ontario, just because there's all these beautiful farms and you're right way out in the middle of nowhere, and it's just very picturesque. But you finally pass these farms and you turn the corner and you drive down the road a little bit and you see the sign, and it says Canadian or Canada's crown jewel short track.
Yeah.
That's what it is. Like it's the crown jewel. I don't know if we could have a national touring race there, maybe a truck series. I don't know about Xfinity. I think it's way more. And plus, we go to Bowmanville, right? So like, it would be redundant to go to Bowmanville and to go to Hagersville. So it's a great short track. I love the racing. There's a big track. I think that it fits a lot of things. You got all that space. They own a ton of property. Also, like I know the ownership there has gone through a shift. There was a passing. Kenny
Hill.
Yeah, Kenny Hill died. And I don't know what that means for the track's future. I haven't talked to Alex because the border's been shut down. So I haven't talked to Alex in a while either. And by the way, miss Alex. Love Alex to death. So
great guy, yeah.
Fantastic.
I just don't think that the facility is national touring level. I think if you wanted to think outside the box, you could do it. Like, it doesn't really have the hospitality suites. It has a big box that would serve a lot of purposes. You don't necessarily need the boxes and the suites. You have all that land. And you have all that land to where you can you put tents and you can do various different things. But I just don't think it strikes me as being Truck Series, Xfinity Series. Plus, this might be a sticking point in the States, but then you're going to have to explain what that farm is, behind the track on the back stretch. And that's always a fun conversation because they're growing pot.
Yeah.
Well, of course. We're in Canada, right? You're going to be happy.
I like that Kenny and Jerry, they for a while, because they're in tobacco. And so for a while, the big business was tobacco. And now, the social shift has happened in Canada and in the U.S. And it's like, you know what? We're going to grow weed. And we're going to grow it on our racetrack.
Yeah, we're just waiting for that pot sponsorship on a race car. And then,
yes.
I mean,
no doubt.
There's one there's a company that keeps showing up on Twitter, and I'm like, you know what? I just gotta put that on a Pinty's car and see if I can sell that because
I was driving back from our vacation in Montreal, and so we were driving through Ontario, and there's lots of places you can partake if you wish to in Canada. And I do not personally partake, but we wanted to go see it. Like we just wanted to see what is it like to have a pot. Like we're not there yet in the U.S. So I remember going to like this. I forget which dirt track it is near the Ontario-Quebec border. But there was I don't even know if there's a word for it. Like I know that the place where you go to get poutine is a poutineery. I don't know what you would call a place that you can go get pot legally. We don't have that in the U.S. But I remember walking in because I wanted to see this store, and I was like, I felt like it was illegal for me to be there. I'm like, I'm not buying. I don't partake. I don't partake in the U.S. I don't partake here. But I'm like looking over my shoulder. I'm like, is this legal? So that's one of my favorite Canada Nero racetrack stories. Tying it into Ducasa. I love that place. It is truly the crown jewel. I just don't think it's going to be at that level. Plus, you just have Bowmanville so close, and they got a really good thing there going with Mosport.
Mm-hmm.
Let's shift it to something that we've all been really looking forward to, and that is Ohsweken Speedway in the Pinty series. Like I said, we had Clinton Jeffrey on with us with Adam Ross a little while back, and I said, like, when they released the ticket sale for the tickets and everything, I bought them. They still have my ticket money, and hopefully regardless of how this schedule gets bumped around, we get to go this year. What are your thoughts of the Pinty series doing something which was supposed to beat Cup, but it didn't?
Yeah, I was so bummed for a lot of reasons, because the entry list to that first year race was so cool. You had Stuart Friesen entered, and at Kenny Wallace, Herm was going to come down, and you're sticking. You look at the Pinty's roster. To me, it was so cool anyway, because you have two camps, right? You have the short trackers, you have the oval guys, and you have the road racers, and now you're sticking them on neither of their home turf.
Yeah.
And then you had like the dirt ringers coming in, and this is actually a much larger conversation, and we keep going off the rails, and I apologize for that. Just we can talk racing all day, but I'm actually
two parts.
Yeah, I'm worried about the Pinty series for multiple reasons, because I don't know how these teams can stay afloat with this kind of limited schedule thing. And having an event like Ohsweken was going to be great, because you're going to have a full house. There's going to be a great deal of interest. Tons of people were going to watch on Fans Choice back then, but then Track Pass, and it was going to have huge interest on both sides of the border. And that's good for sponsorship revenue and ROI, and for teams that are selling seats. I don't know how they're going to stay afloat doing 6 races a year last year, and maybe again this year, and not being able to do business in Quebec, or doing business in the prairies if you have sponsors there. When Brett's based out of the prairies. So I worry long term for the Pinty series, and we might need NASCAR itself to kind of subsidize Pinty's, because I want it to be healthy, and I don't know. I should do a story. That's actually a great story idea. How is DJ, and how are the Dumoulin's from just a business standpoint, because they sell their seats?
Yeah.
We were going to lose Andrew Ranger before the pandemic even happened. Like, he wasn't going to be part of the roster, because the whole Mopar thing fell apart. So I don't know where we're going to be after this. So this goes beyond Ohsweken, which would have been awesome.
Yeah.
I worry about everywhere.
It's interesting, because Graydon and I, I wouldn't call us like, we focus mainly on the Pinty series for that main reason, is there wasn't really a content, creator, or there wasn't a show kind of focused mainly on it. And it's,
to everyone's credit that does work on it. Yes. We're saying that we were just hoping to fill the gap somewhat.
Well, and that in the off season, it's exceptionally quiet here, and we want to keep things going and keep things rolling, and trying to get company interest, because that's what's going to keep teams afloat. But it is exactly, it's kind of refreshing to have somebody else feel the same way, that has that kind of worry, and is it, back in the day with CASCAR, we had a good balance of companies that sponsored in NASCAR as well. You had the School Bandit car, you had Exide, you had Napa. So there was kind of a bit of a crossover effect, and you had kind of Pinty's cars, or CASCAR race cars, that looked like Cup cars, because they had the same paint scheme, same sponsor. Even with Alex LeBay, we had the 32 and Can-Am, they kind of crossed over. So do you think still a relationship that way, that some of these companies that are in the United States sponsoring, Like in Anheuser-Busch, they sponsor so many Cup cars or so many races in Cup with Kevin Harvick, but we don't have, of all things, a beer sponsorship in Canada. Of all things, beer and racing go hand in hand. So do you think there's work that could happen that way?
It's tough in general because I don't know, and the reason I don't know is I don't know how these teams are structuring. We talked about sponsorship earlier on the Cup side, and I think you've seen it with 22 Racing that Scott has structured his business to where if you're trying to get seat time to go do something else, to go national touring, we'll give you that. Or if you're coming to Mosport and you want to get ready for the truck race, we've got a seat for you. But if you want to run the full schedule, I don't know, mostly because I don't understand. Oh, a cat in the background. I got distracted. I don't understand how to sell a Pinty Series sponsorship because I don't know how to even go about that. Like I would have a pretty good idea here in the States, the different ways to go about doing that. You could either do it through parts manufacturers. I don't know how you stay afloat beyond selling your seats to the highest bidders, and that's a problem. And that's the way racing at all levels has kind of evolved. And there's a lot of family money. And listen, I'm not going to criticize family money because I would much rather see 23 car fields than 13 car fields.
Yes.
And the problem is right now is that we have 13 car fields sometimes, and it's just family money. And the reason why is that we don't have corporate sponsors who just want to be a part of racing. And I don't know how to get that back. I don't know how to encourage them that there's an ROI, there's people to be reached. And that's the biggest challenge for all racing. That's not just a Pinty Series problem. Or I came of age as a short track fan in the All Pro Series. NASCAR bought it. It became the Slim Jim All Pro Series. Which had Pensacola, Mobile, Martinsville, and Bristol, and Montgomery, and you had this great mix of people that had, privateer family money, but you had like legitimate sponsors on cars, racers who worked hard to secure sponsors and people who wanted to be in racing because they felt like they could reach a certain demographic. And we just don't have that right now in grassroots racing in general. And I don't know how to get there. And I'm struggling right now. I don't know. And I wish I had an answer, and I'm struggling because I want to give you guys an answer, and it's just not there.
Yeah, because we've talked about it. I mean, Graydon's heard me holler a billion times and scream and be angry and all that stuff because we had, for years in NASCAR, you had, and what I would call very well-known and reputable brands that were featured, companies that people knew all over the world. As soon as you saw it, you had the Cheerios car for years, you had the Goodwrench car for years, the Home Depot car, and then you go into even further where you got the Jack Daniels, and then you'd have the Jim Beams, and then, so you'd have a lot of brands that were really well known. Now there's a lot of companies coming in. I have no idea what they are, where they're from, or what they do, and that's kind of the same thing here is that we need those companies to step up, and corporate just looks at it and goes and no, so yeah, we pose that question obviously because there's hope to get those again.
This is who I would ask. This would be a good written story, and it'd be a good podcast guest for you guys. Tags. I would love to know what the selling point is. I would love to have Alex Tagliani write a how-to guide to acquire and then serve sponsors because he has a lot of partners and he goes to the moon and back to make sure that he's talking about them. I mean, gosh, it's funny. Like we talked about, poutine earlier. I tweeted excitement that I bought a Saint-Hubert, packet, and Tagliani responded to my tweet, quote retweeted, and was like, the best poutine you could have on either side of the border, Saint Hubert. And that was just Alex Tagliani busting his ass to sell for his sponsors.
Yeah.
He's so good at that. So I would love to just have, read a how-to guide from Alex and his management group of how to connect with brands, because these are actually like reputable national brands.
Yeah.
And he found some way to convince them that you can reach regular blue-collar, hardworking people at the racetrack, and they're going to buy the poutine. They're going to do their home improvement needs because they're fans of me and they're fans of our series.
Yeah.
That's the guy to talk to figure this out, because he's got it figured out.
You're absolutely right. Tag is one of the best and one of the hardest working guys at his job, and you can tell. We did have him on, and we spent a good bit of his time talking about his e-karting facility, and he's super excited about that. But that would be a great interview. Would be talking about his business savvy and how he does his sponsorship minglings, because he's very, very good at it, no doubt.
Yeah, pitch guy. He's even able to get Gatorade for his e-karting facility. Like, that's just not a small company.
Yeah.
They can't even get Gatorade on, cup teams anymore. They got him back for the throwback, but Matt, we want to thank you for taking time to chat with us. I think we could easily go 3 to 4 hours easily and just chat racing with you, but we know you're a very busy man. So I want to thank you for coming on and chatting with us.
And Cassie with the cameo.
And Cassie, we're going to make sure to get Cassie actually on the show. That was actually going to be the proposal, was after we were finished, was to get Cassie on as well. But the one the one rumor we saw just before you go, Keselowski and Roush Fenway, very, very juicy rumor there. If you had to guess, would you say 50-50, 40%, or is it just hot air for right now?
Yeah, I can't say, because I haven't worked on that, because that one caught me by surprise, and so I can't tell you whether it's legit or not. But I can say a lot of people initially, when they saw that report, it's like, well, isn't that beneath Brad? I mean, Brad could go literally anywhere, and there are fewer seats available now than I think he would have thought. And plus the pandemic hurt him a little bit, because he had much more suitors before the pandemic, but Hendrick filled a seat with Larson, and that was a really good opportunity for them. 2311 is expanding, but I think he really wants to stay with Ford. He and Ford are really close. If you're going to stay with Ford, what are your options, right? And so you've got Penske, and you've got Stuart Haas is full, but I don't really think Brad fits there. I mean, maybe that would be a weird fit, right?
Yeah.
So let me tell you why, if this does happen, if there is truth to this, why it makes sense. The next gen car is going to completely change initially what our perception of a good team or a bad team is. And I think there is a great opportunity for a team and an organization like Roush that has fallen behind from an engineering standpoint over the last decade to be able to really figure this out. Because what's been wrong with Roush is that they got behind 10 years ago, and once they realized they were behind, then they try to catch up. But the problem is they catch up, and the team that was here is now here. And then Roush makes the jump to here, and that team goes here. And you're constantly chasing, and you're stuck. You're stuck being that 15th place team. This new car is going to change everything, because it's now a spec car. It is completely identical from Penske. Penske is going to have the same car as Roush. So if you're going to make that jump, this is the time. He's got partners. He has the ability to bring people in. He's got a company that he owns, a manufacturing business. And he still long-term wants to be an owner in the Cup Series. It makes sense. It makes sense in more ways than it ever would have prior to this next-gen car. I was not surprised to hear it, even though a lot of people were.
I mean, look at what Haas CNC Racing was without Tony Stewart, what Tony Stewart brought his resources and his game, elevated what Haas CNC was. Who's to say? And as you said, it's the perfect time to strike while the sport's in this shift that Brad could elevate RFR's game and bring them back to where they used to be. So it's the case for all the teams. So we'll see what happens, I guess. Matt, on behalf of my kids and myself, sorry for my back issues partway through the episode there, but and thanks a lot. I'm glad we finally got to do this, and we'll have to do it again.
Yeah, absolutely. This was actually a lot of fun, and we need to do this. I could talk to you guys forever, and hopefully the next time we do this, we actually have Canadian racing to talk about in addition to American racing. But yeah, for sure, let's do it again.
Absolutely, and we'll do it from the track, hopefully at some point as well. Graydon, let's just hope that we get that Robax sponsorship for you. So
yeah, let's look at that.
That'll be good.
Yeah.
We want to thank Matt Weaver and actually Cassie Fambro for showing up on the show today. Thank you for tuning into the Stickers and Scuffs podcast. We will catch you all next week.